of Schoren. It's on basically essays. One volume is on social sciences, and the other is on arts and culture. And a couple of us spoke, in fact, today's a few days here, I see her, who spoke about labels from one point of view, and I spoke about labels from another point of view. I think that the more we talk about that, the better we can understand what's going on, and we can break down these labels to see what they represent. What I want to do is just talk briefly about some representations of the sort of psychological state of some of the characters we see in films and in literature. The notion of Italian immigrants and I'm talking about people now who came at the beginning of the century and were born maybe in the 20s and 30s. The idea of going to counseling or therapy just was, you know, say, to translate from the Italian, didn't enter the antechambers of their mind. It just wasn't something you did. And those who instead did have issues, challenges, emotional challenges, they were referred to as highly emotional. And it basically stopped there. It wasn't really until those who were born in the late 40s, maybe then the 50s, that looked toward psychological counseling as something that could be therapeutic. And I think that's really important when we look at some of the look at some of the literature and cinema that has come down through the decades, if not through the last 100 and some odd years, 1885 for, let's say, literature, if we want to use that as a marker, and perhaps 1906 and on, for the first time an Italian was shown on the silver screen. He was called, by the way, Dago Pete. So that too gives you an idea of how the Italian was seen at the beginning of the 20th century. So I brought 3 books. I'm not going to read, I wanted to, but I'm not going to. 3 books. One is I Trapiantati by Giuseppe Brecciolini. One is a novel called Tender Warriors by Rachel Guido de Vries. A lot of people aren't familiar with this novel. It was published by, one might say, a small press, I'll say a boutique press. And then the third is, of course, what I consider one of the best American novels of the mid-20th century, and that is The Fortunate Pilgrim by Mario Puzo. It's really a great novel. It's not a great Italian American novel. It's a great novel, just in general. And all 3 of these, well, Prezzolini, of course, is the journalist. He's looking at it as an observer. He says an Italian who was here basically from the 30s to the 50s. I Trapiantati is a collection of his journalistic essays that he had written over the years. He put them together. But he says something at the very beginning about the Italian immigrant. He says 2 things that I think are very significant. One, he says these are his words, turbati di mente. That's the first thing he says. And he says that they know neither English nor Italian. They are neither capable of articulating well in English or in Italian, and that they live in this interstitial space, and that they have difficulties of quote-unquote assimilation. That there is an issue. Do we talk about assimilation, or do we talk about acculturation, right? And those are some issues that we've dealt with. So he's the first. Now, with Tender Warriors, there's a character in Tender Warriors, and there's, of course, a character in The Fortunate Pilgrim. In Tender Warriors, there's a character, and the narrator actually tells us who feels the weight of immigration, right? Feels the weight of immigration, now I mentioned Dago Pete, who feels the weight of immigration through discrimination. And the weight, the extra weight. Immigration as, if we just use Prezzolini as an example, one example, that idea of turbati di mente, not being able to belong to neither, or not belonging to neither one or the other, or not being able to articulate well in one language or the other, right? So the idea of discrimination weighs heavily, right? It comes down really heavily on the character. What happens is this character indeed suffers from it, and suffers from it in outbursts of violence and things of that sort. We had the same issue, or a similar issue, it's not the same, it's a similar issue in The Fortunate Pilgrim. Lucia Santa's husband, at one point, it's almost midway through the novel, she goes to see him in an asylum. It's in I don't know what you want to call it, sanatorium, an asylum, whatever. he's in a place where those who are not mentally healthy are, right? And he is literally tied down and he's in a bathtub. And he's just, his head is hanging back. And he's basically mentally gone. Mentally gone. The weight of immigration, there too we could say, has come down on it. But while he was, we find this through the discussions of the children, because at a certain point, the boys want to bring him back home. And they want Lucia Santa to take care of him. They want him to live at home and to die at home. And Octavia, who is the real force, one of the true forces in this book, says, no, don't you remember how he treated Bamba and the idea of violence. So there is, and within a good number of the literature, there's the figure of the angry immigrant male that we really don't discuss a lot among at least those of us who do literary and cinematic studies. It's not there really that much. I think it's something to look at. Now, I'll close with this. There's a no longer young film director named Joseph Greco. He did a number of shorts, but he did a movie, I think it was back in 2009 or 10, called Canvas. And it is the story of a couple, played by Joe Pantoliano and Marcia Gay Harden, seen through the eyes of their child, their young boy. And Canvas is called Canvas because the mother, the Marcia Gay Harden character, is a painter, and she paints. But she also suffers from schizophrenia. And it's a wonderful story of how the husband and the son deal with this issue, how they deal with the issue of schizophrenia, and how they try not to stigmatize it, at least among themselves. And it's perhaps one of the first articulations, aesthetic articulations of mental health, I would say, among Italian Americans. We can go back to The Godfather, we go back to Mean Streets, we go, Johnny Boy in Mean Streets. Ironically, his name is, his friend's name is, his name is Cervello, they say Cervello. If you listen closely, it's Cervello, but he's anything but Brady, right? Johnny Boy. Anyway, these are just some of the tidbits that I think abound in the cultural articulations that we haven't yet studied as well as or as much as we should.
Thank you.